Hi guys, welcome to your 7th day of class. Whenever I put that day 7, it's because it's the 7th time that we've met, okay? So if you're an A day, you're meeting on September the 9th. If you're a B day, you're meeting September the 3rd, okay? Your warm-up, I'm asking how many different types of lines there are, sorry, and if you can name them for me, okay? So if you recall our notes from last class, we learned that there are 4 different types of lines. Remember, Slope Guy helps us remember the direction that those lines face, right? His face is made up of those 4 types of lines, right? So we have positive, negative, 0, and undefined. Okay, we weren't supposed to answer that anywhere. We were just supposed to think about it, and then I asked questions, and students were able to respond. So on our agenda for today, the learning target posted is, or learning targets, I should say, are to find slope from a graph, to find y-intercept from a graph, and our main focus is going to be how to write equations from a graph. Okay, so we're going to use those top 2 to help us with that third main bullet. The checklist is to identify what the y-intercept is first, to determine if our line is positive or negative, because that will help us know which direction to go. If it's positive or negative, it will help us determine if we'll go up and right or if we have to go down and right for our rise over run. And then our last step would be to put our m and our b into our equation and write the equation out. Okay, so before we go ahead and start taking some notes, remember the equation that we learned is y equals mx plus b. Okay, m, we are going to practice always circling our slope. That is our slope. Today we're going to learn how we can find what it is on a graph by doing rise over run. Okay, our b, remember, is in a box. We include that plus sign because that plus sign can change from a plus to a minus, okay, depending on where our intercept lies, right? So we're going to learn how to identify what the b is by locating the y-axis, right, and seeing where that line crosses or touches the y-axis, okay? So in your notes, go ahead and write today's date, 9/2/20. I'm sorry, if you are a B day, your date would be 9/3/20, okay? Your title is Writing Equations. And I want you to put graph in parentheses because that's where we are writing equations from, okay? We are going to learn how to write them from tables, from word problems, but today we're going to focus on graphs, okay? So I want you to rewrite that equation, y equals mx plus b. We're going to practice always circling our slope, the number that is with that letter x, that is our slope. We're going to practice keeping that b, the plus b, in a box. That is the y-intercept. I'm going to shorten it and put y-int. Okay, and our focus today is going to be how to find slope on a graph and how to locate that y-intercept on the y-axis. Okay, so go ahead and draw yourself a bigger graph than you did last class. Automatic, we should be labeling our x-axis and our y-axis. And automatically put a negative sign and a plus sign. So I'm not going to include that as part of our steps, okay? This should be automatic. We should see this every single time. X-axis, y-axis, minus side, negative, and then a plus side. And I'll explain how that helps us, okay? So I'm just going to put a random point on my y-axis. I'm going to say that this is at the number 2, okay? So that means that my b is 2. I'm writing it over here off to the side so I can keep my information nice and neat. Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and just draw a line through that point, pointing to the plus side, right? Because it's pointing to the plus sign, that means that my line is positive. Okay, So just a little reminder, helpful hint, right? My line is facing in the plus direction, so that means it's a positive line, okay? Our job is to locate another point on our line, right? And then we're gonna connect those two. If you saw that YouTube video talking about slope, we've got to connect those two by making a little triangle, right? Because my line is positive, that means that I had to count up first. So I had to rise up, run to the right, okay? So let's see, we're gonna, just trying to organize it for us. Okay, so we're gonna use arches to help us see how many times we had to move in the up direction, okay? So from my B, I'm gonna count 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that was 3 arches up, right? So that's my rise. And then I'm gonna run from that stopping point, right? So after I run up, I stop. Rise up, I stop. Then I'm gonna run to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4. My run is 4, okay? When we are setting up slope, remember it is rise over run. That's our M, so don't forget to put M equals rise over run. So now we just got to go take what our rise was, plug it in, take what our run was, plug it in, and there's my slope. Okay, we like to leave it as a fraction. Okay, if you need to convert it, you can use Desmos. So then I'm going to go take my information, put it next to my B. Okay, so now I should be able to write my equation. Okay, so if I have my B and my M, I'm going to use my format, right? And plug in those numbers where they belong in the equation. So y equals, instead of the letter M, I'm going to use what we worked out, right? 3/4 x. Instead of the letter B, I'm going to put what we actually found, right? Plus 2. To stay consistent, I want us to circle that slope, put a box around your B. Okay, we're going to continue, but this time we're going to have a negative line. I want you to see how with a negative you would rise down instead of rising up. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put my point down here on the bottom half of my y-axis, right? I'm just going to draw a mini line. If I notice this line is pointing to the minus sign, right? The negative sign. So that means that my line is negative. Okay. I'm also going to just call this point -5. Okay. That's where it's touching the y-axis at -5. Okay. So organizing ideas, B is equal to -5. I'm going to select another point on my line, and we're going to try to figure out what our slope is based off of those 2 points. Okay. Remember, our line is negative, so we rise down, color that in, and then we run to the right. Okay. Let me organize this for us. Okay, so now we can go and count the arches that we make, right? So from my -5, I'm rising down, 1, 2, and I stop. So I'm going to write a 2 right here because that's what my rise was, right? Then my run is going to the right. So it's 1, 2, 3. So if I'm setting that up as rise over run, we cannot forget the negative sign, okay? So we need to make sure we put a negative in front. So my M is -2/3 this time, okay? So if we're going to write that as an equation, y is equal to -2/3 x. This time I'm going to put -5 because my B was a -5. So I went and I took that negative and it became my minus sign. So when I circle my slope, make sure you circle that negative sign with it. Make sure you put your negative with that 5 for your B. Okay, guys, so just kind of wrapping up our ideas about rise over run. So I'm going to rewrite it, rise over run. Okay, remember when we are talking about rise, that can go in two directions. Okay, if your line is positive, it's going to go up. If your line is negative, it's going to go down, right? So positive line, my rise goes up. Okay, negative line, my rise goes down. Easy thing to remember about my run is that it's always to the right. So when you're finding points on that line, guys, make sure that the second point you're finding is on the right-hand side, okay? Right-hand side. Okay, guys, the next part that we did in class was we went to Jamboard and we actively took notes as I was doing the examples. Okay, you are not going to have that opportunity, but the notes are going to be posted in the presentation. Okay, so I am going to put the Jamboard lesson so that way you can click on it and see the examples. Okay, you're not going to have to actually go in and do the practice. Okay, I have the examples done for you so that way you can see the work that we put into it and you can use it for your Khan Academy assignments. Okay.